A person has a real idea. Before they share it, they add 5 disclaimers. They lower their voice. They say this is probably wrong, but they watch the room dismiss it. And somewhere underneath, they feel relieved. Not disappointed, relieved, because disappointment would mean they wanted to be heard. Relief means the invisibility was the goal, not the accident. There is a behavior that gets misread constantly. It looks like low confidence. It sounds like modesty. From the outside, it appears to be someone who simply hasn't learned to speak up yet. But that is not what it is. It is a system, quietly constructed, carefully maintained, used by people who have learned, at some point, in some environment, that being truly seen carries a cost they are not willing to pay again. So they make themselves forgettable, with precision. The most uncomfortable part of this pattern is not that it exists. It is that the people running it are often the most capable people in the room. They have the ideas. They have the ability. They have everything required to be noticed. And they use all of it to make sure they aren't. Why would someone engineer their own invisibility? Because from the outside, it just looks like someone who needs more confidence. And so that is the explanation everyone accepts, including the person doing it. A person is in a meeting. They know the answer. They have known it since the first 5 minutes. But they wait. They recalculate. They second-guess the social temperature of the room. By the time they decide it is safe to speak, someone else has said it. They nod along. They do not correct the record. They simply disappear into the agreement and feel something that is almost like comfort. That is not hesitation. That is management. They get an opportunity that requires visibility, a presentation, a conversation with someone important, a moment where their real capability would become impossible to ignore. Something shifts the night before. They over-prepare until the energy becomes mechanical. They walk in technically ready and emotionally absent. Afterwards, they deflect every compliment immediately. The team did most of it. I got lucky with the material. It wasn't that good, honestly, out of an urgent need to return to a size that feels survivable. The preemptive disclaimer operates the same way. This is probably a bad idea, but you've likely already thought of this. I don't know much about this space, but the dismissal always arrives first, before the idea, before anyone has the opportunity to decide what they think. Because if they dismiss themselves first, nobody else gets the chance to. Have you ever noticed this in your own life? Not the big moments, the small ones. The moment you lowered your voice before you even knew what you were going to say. The moment you added a disclaimer to something you were actually certain about. The moment you watched someone receive credit for an idea that was yours and said nothing. Visibility carries risk. Real risk. If nobody sees you, nobody can judge you. Nobody can decide you are not enough. Nobody can confirm the thing you have been quietly afraid of. So the mind makes a calculation. It weighs the possibility of recognition against the certainty of exposure, and it chooses safety, dressed up as modesty, dressed up as just not being that kind of person. But it is fear, specifically the fear of being fully seen and found inadequate. Jung studied the mask people construct to manage how much of themselves they allow the world to access. He called it the persona, the version of the self designed not to attract, but to control exposure. Most people assume the persona is built for performance, to appear more confident, more capable, more powerful. But some personas are built in reverse, designed to deflect attention, to signal, there is nothing here worth examining, move on. I am not a threat and I am not a target. That signal was learned somewhere, in a childhood where standing out brought consequences, in a relationship where capability was punished, in an environment where visibility reliably preceded pain. The mind recorded that and began quietly engineering situations where the same exposure could never happen again. The person who makes themselves forgettable is not passive. They are doing something, actively, continuously, with a level of social precision that would be genuinely impressive if it were pointed in a different direction. The forgettability is not happening to them. They are producing it, and they have become so skilled at the production that it feels like personality. It feels like just who they are. Nothing. Nobody is keeping them invisible, not the room, not the people who talk over them, not the culture that rewards louder voices. Those things exist, but they are not the cause. They are the convenient explanation that protects the real one. The behavior is theirs. The disclaimers are theirs. The deflection is theirs. The precise, repeated management of every moment that could have made them visible, that is theirs. This is what Machiavelli understood about people who remain powerless not through circumstance but through design. They are not victims of their environment. They are architects of it, calling self-erasure humility, calling self-construction bad luck. The question is never, why does nobody notice me? That question maintains the fiction that visibility is something that happens to you, that being seen is outside your control. Is in single quotes T. The real question is, what do I believe will happen if I stop making myself easy to overlook? Sit with that, not the surface answer, the one that arrives before the rational explanation, the one that feels slightly like danger. That answer is not a personality trait. It is not who you are. It is a conclusion drawn from old evidence in an environment that no longer exists, and conclusions can be re-examined, but only by the person who is willing to stop pretending they had nothing to do with their own disappearance.